Well, thank you very much for joining us this morning for our 60th annual Business Outlook Survey. This is our opportunity to ask our businesses what they think is going to be in the year ahead, and at the same time validate what they told us last year about what actually happened in 2018. So I just think interesting, 60 years. I stopped this morning, I thought to myself, like 60 years. And we had Governor Minor, and I don't know if everybody knew, but the year before, he was in his first year, and the year before, he defeated Malcolm Forbes, 54%. So I was like, wow, that was interesting. So that was my little history tidbit for the day. That was going on 60 years ago right here in Trenton. So we have some encouraging news in the outlook this year, and this is consistent over the last few years. New Jersey businesses believe and tell us that in 2018, their profits and sales did rise. They told us last year they were going to. And they also told us that they were going to make investments in 2018, and they actually did make those investments. So as I said, we look back and then we look forward. Going into 2019, they're going to continue to make those investments. They're talking about some small-scale wage increases, which is very good for New Jersey's economy and our workers. Hiring profits and sales are forecasted to rise in 2019 as well. And then you all know the work that BIA does on workforce development. So we have a whole section we'll talk about on workforce development. But the good news is that our companies continue to believe that New Jersey schools outperform better than other states, and that's very important for us as well. But of course, there's always an other side to the equation, and our companies have concerns going into 2019 as well. They're guarded about New Jersey's economy, and we'll talk about why that is, okay? They absolutely are planning for offsets to minimum wage. In fact, we know, and we just heard, that the Assembly Speaker is going to be posting his bill on minimum wage on Monday, and so our companies are preparing for that, and they have been preparing for that. They still feel that we are non-competitive to other states in many areas, and we'll go on a deeper dive on that. Unfortunately, we're not going to see a lot of expansion in New Jersey next year from our companies that are here. And unfortunately, we still have issues about outmigration. Again, you know, BIA has studied outmigration now for 4 years. And the trend, again, still seems to be that folks will not intend to retire in New Jersey. So those are some of the macro concerns, and why don't we try to drill down and see what we're talking about here. So the outlook summary, this is the good news. And if you look closely at these numbers, it's about 5 years that these categories continue to go up, that companies are continuing to see an increase in sales, profit, and employment. This makes us feel really good about where we are today in the state of New Jersey. I'd say this is a good sign for us, for sure. How are we investing? How are our companies going to be looking in this next year of investing in themselves? So again, they talked about this past year. They were going to make investments, and they did. 32% expected that their purchases in their own company were going to increase, and they did. In 19, they see that that is going to continue to rise. And at the same time, as we said, 70% expect to increase wages in 2019. That's very important. Every time we hear about full employment and the continued increase in wage, and this is what's so important, is this fact that when companies recognize and pay competitive wages, which New Jersey companies do, they continue to invest in their employees, so their employees build their skill set, and then their skill set rises, so do their wages. And that's why we can continue to see an increase in wages. That's a very important factor for us. So let's stay on minimum wage for a minute, because as I said, our companies are preparing for what's going to be with minimum wage going forward. 66% of our members said that it will impact them, and 39 projected that the impact will be significant. So what do they mean by impact? Well, we can see it's talking about reduction in staff. We're talking about reduced hours, raising prices, and automation. These are things consistently that our companies have told us over the past few years, that there has been a discussion around increasing minimum wage, and our companies, this is how they are preparing for that. Now, we have some dynamic bills. Not only is there a bill Monday on a minimum wage that's posted, but we know last week there were bills that came out of committee on legalization of marijuana, adult recreational, as well as changes to medical marijuana. And so we asked our companies, you know, how do you feel about legalization of marijuana in the state of New Jersey? And you can see that the results are very mixed in terms of what they think it will do for New Jersey's economy. Some think it'll be helpful, some kind of say don't really know, and some aren't very positive on what the impact on the economy will be. But more important, we asked our members, what do you think the legalization of marijuana means for you and the impact on your business? And as you can see, 23% said, yeah, I don't think there's going to be any impact at all. But the majority of those who do believe that there's going to be an impact, the highest amount, are concerned about workplace safety and they're concerned about productivity in the workforce. And I will take a pause here just to go back to that bill last week. This is what our companies have been telling us now since the discussion of marijuana started in the state of New Jersey. And this is why BIA was such an ardent supporter for an amendment last week on workplace safety. And we want to thank our policymakers for making that amendment last week and ensuring that employers have a right to ensure a safe workplace for their employees as we move forward to legalization of marijuana. It's extremely important. On this bigger picture every year, we ask our members, rate for us your top 3, 5, 10 concerns. And we have a whole list of categories, and then we ask them to number them by way of priority. Typically, these are the 3 we see at the top. However, news this year is the first time in decades that healthcare costs was not number 1. Healthcare cost is number 3. Now, we have seen over the years, premiums are still rising in the state of New Jersey, but they're rising at a slower pace. And honestly, when they were rising at double digits and people were really concerned, now they're rising at single digits, and that looks good, okay? But healthcare in the state of New Jersey, please don't take this as a positive. Healthcare in the state of New Jersey is still extremely expensive, but clearly, given policy in the state of New Jersey over this past year, our members are now more concerned with property taxes and cost of doing business and what that means to them every day in their companies. So then we look at the economic climate, and as you know, again, BIA has been studying out migration now for 4 years, and what that means for companies that leave and people that leave. So we started asking this question a few years ago and trending it. The first is about expansion in the state of New Jersey. If you're going to expand, and if so, where are you going to expand? Now, you'll recall I said when we started just a few minutes ago that we're not going to see a lot of expansion in the state of New Jersey, at least from the companies who are here. This explains that, okay? This is not a lot of expansion. But what worries me even more is the companies who are going to expand, 36% of them are going to do it outside the state of New Jersey. We have companies that are here, that are headquartered here, that aren't necessarily picking up and leaving, but they're creating new jobs and they're not creating them in the state of New Jersey. So while we talk about outmigration, significantly, equally as important is stagnation, and this concerns us, okay? The other piece is individuals. Now, last year, we recall that we were optimistic because we saw the numbers on people who were going to keep New Jersey as their domicile in retirement. That number started to turn because if you go back to 2016, we had elimination of estate tax and we had the increase in the threshold for retirement income. That was in the fall of 2016. Our survey went out and we thought that we'd start to see an uptick of people who were saying, oh, I think I can stay in New Jersey. Well, that did happen last year. Wasn't significant, but it started. Because you could see that we went from are you going to make New Jersey your domicile from 32 up to 40%, a little bit of an uptick there. And at the same time, the negative was coming down. But lo and behold, this is turning again. And I think we're seeing this because people are feeling the pressure of the lack of affordability in the state of New Jersey, regardless of the changes we made to estate tax and retirement income. Now, we can't just look at New Jersey alone, right? We have to ask and compare how are our businesses feeling about the national economy as well. So unfortunately, how they view New Jersey's economy, only 40% say good to excellent, while over here we have 83% saying that the national economy is good or excellent. Very bullish on the national economy, not so much on New Jersey's economy. This gives us a net outlook for the state's economy, and you can see we're flat. This year, the net outlook is flat. What that means is as many that feel that the state is going in a good direction, the same amount feel the state is going in a not good direction. And as a result of that, we're leveling out at 0. So now we take an opportunity to compare New Jersey to our other states around a series of different areas. What screamed out to me on this slide is there's way too much red up here, way too much red, which means too many things that our companies are feeling New Jersey's lagging in, and that's causing challenge for New Jersey business in order to continue to stay here and grow. So for example, taxes and fees, worse, 88% worse than other places. We know we're the #1 tax state in the nation. This is ringing out loud and clear. Tantamount to that is controlling government spending, because in this year's budget we saw tax increases, which means our folks are concerned when they're paying more taxes, it means we're not controlling government spending. Those two things are running with each other, and that makes sense that those concerns would be together. Other areas that we see of significant concern, again, we see healthcare cost, rising labor cost. Labor cost here, we're seeing these numbers rise because paid sick leave, and again, we see that increased minimum wages is on the forefront once again. Good news on this slide, at the top, you can see quality of public schools. Again, people feel that we compare favorably, as well as quality of workforce. And any of you who hear me speak all the time, you know, I always say I start positive, end positive, and I always start with we have great assets in the state of New Jersey. Those assets absolutely are our workforce, and we need to mine those assets and make sure that we can keep them here. And then we look at our industries. How do our companies think by industry they're going to fare next year? Construction, very strong, continues to be very strong, which is a really good sign, because when construction stays strong, that means that things are growing. Interesting, if you go to the last category, wholesale trade, you can imagine that's declining because of the tariff issues that we're having, okay? But for the most part, you know, healthcare continues to lag, and the healthcare industry has been challenged with so much consolidation, and so that's playing out as well. The other areas are pretty static. And then current business conditions. So we always ask our companies in the economic life cycle, where do you see yourself? You know, we had a recession way back in '09, and every year we always ask, where do you see yourself relative to a life cycle, an economic life cycle? And the good news here is that our companies continue to feel that they're in an expansion mode. That's very important. And then investments. We talked about, you know, how are they companies investing in themselves, and we see that 61% made investments to increase productivity in 2018. And this is how they invested. Leading by a lot, information technology, hardware, no surprise there. I think every day, given the dynamics of technology, companies are continuing to upgrade their technology. Workforce development and training, again, this is companies investing in their people in order to lift skills, very important. Equipment and production process. And then what are your plans for the next 12 years, next 12 months? Good story again, that this spending is going to continue. You can see spending will be about the same for 41%, and then the other going around 29% are going to increase their investment, and there's only 6% that say they'll decrease their investment next year. So that's important. Again, every time a company brings money in and invests it back in themselves, that's what drives growth, and that's what makes the economy strong. We talked about expansion before, and unfortunately we're not going to see a lot of it. And here we can understand, we see that between very good and good, only 20% think New Jersey is a good location to expand their facilities. We think that is driven in part by the fact that over the last year, we have not eased regulatory burdens. And you can see 83% say no, the regulatory environment is still very challenging. And when you add that on top of the high cost of doing business in the state of New Jersey, those two factors together, you can understand why companies are challenged to expand here. So let's shift to education and workforce development. Again, you all know how invested NJBIA is. You know, I say every day that our mission, when we wake up every day, we have to create new jobs in the state of New Jersey. We create jobs, we have to make sure there's a workforce to fill those jobs, and then we have to make sure those jobs are sustainable by having an affordable and competitive business climate. It's that easy. Create jobs, have a feeder system to fill those jobs, and make sure we sustain those jobs. That's the signs of a good economy. So what we do is we try very hard at BIA to create and facilitate the interconnectivity of business and education. We've done that through our post-secondary education task force report. Many of you got copies of that, and you joined us when we released that last year. But we have a long way to go. As you can see, 80% of our companies are not engaged with their county vocational schools. 72% are not engaged with their local schools at the K-12 level. And 60% haven't used employee training programs along with those schools. Now, that is dire to me. However, look how we're slowly moving the needle on this, okay? Because the first time we asked this question was last year. And when we asked our companies, why aren't you doing that? Overwhelmingly, the vast majority of them said, because we didn't know we could, right? So we have to create awareness to our businesses of their ability to partner with their schools, be it K-12, community college, career and technical education, or the public-private four-year schools. Here, what is encouraging to me, albeit a little bit, is the numbers are starting to turn a little. So last year, you know, we had 51% said they participate. This year, it's 53%. the littlest bit, right? But to me, that's a move in the right direction, and BIA is there creating those partnerships, and those partnerships are significantly important. Companies have to help to inform the curriculum so that students can then graduate with the skill set that our companies need. That's how you build a pipeline, that's how you do workforce development, and that's what we're trying to do by bringing business and academia together in the state of New Jersey. So in conclusion, New Jersey businesses continue to show strength. That's good. They feel really good about what they can control. They're investing in their people, they're investing in their facilities, and we're seeing that that is creating strength in our companies here in the state of New Jersey. However, the impact of higher taxes and increased mandates are concerning them at a higher rate. And you saw that play out on that slide with all that red. Okay? There's absolutely a concern today about cost of doing business in the state of New Jersey more than ever. We continue to be regarded as less competitive than other states in too many categories, I would suggest. But at the end, our members are cautious about the New Jersey economy, but they're very bullish on their own ability for what they can do and what they can produce and how they can perform. And I think if there's a takeaway for this, that's exactly it. That New Jersey businesses are very strong and they're very, very confident in their own ability to perform and perform well and reinvest in their companies and grow. However, they're very, very cautious about where New Jersey's economy is today. And the biggest concern for us is that issue around expansion and stagnation. It's one thing to keep our companies here. It's another thing to ensure that they grow and that those investments turn into new jobs and that those facilities continue to grow.